right, welcome back to the show, and we have the pleasure of having P.Hallyer joining us here at the table. Paul, who was a former defense minister under the Lester Pearson, Paul, right? And you know, I was just thinking about it this morning, and I kind of mentioned it to you before, but you were actually the first politician I ever supported in my life, because I remember the Liberal Convention of 1968, and me and my dad were watching it, and he was supporting you, and so therefore so was I. So it just occurred to me this morning, you're the first politician.
May I congratulate you and thank you.
Being on the right side of the issues ever since. So now we're talking about, you've been a lifelong passionate about macroeconomic issues. That's why you got into politics in the first place.
Correct.
So yeah, so let's get right into it, because we got a lot of ground to cover here. But you claim that the current recession could be ended with the stroke of a pen. I mean, it sounds like a miracle, but maybe you can explain that to people.
Well, it is a miracle, or would be a miracle, but I believe in miracles, or I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. So it is as easy, really, as a stroke of a pen. And the federal government actually has the power to end the recession anytime it wants to.
Okay.
All it needs is the political will and the understanding of what they're doing and how they should do it. And as you know, the Constitution of Canada gives the federal government and Parliament, because it's important, Parliament really has the power, theoretically, to over all matters relating to money and banking. And consequently, they could create all the money that they wanted or that they needed, or they could continue to let the private banks create nearly all of it, and then have to go cup in hand and borrow from the banks when they run short and pay it back with interest, which is one of the silliest things I've ever heard, because they own the patent. And the banks have no rights. All they have are licenses. And yet they're making all the money. And whoever creates the money makes the profit. So what's happened over the years is that the government has given up its profit and passed it over to the banks, which doesn't make a lot of sense for taxpayers.
Because all that interest, which is now going to private banks, could have gone back to the people of Canada through the Bank of Canada.
Absolutely.
Now, okay.
Wow.
See, I already know this stuff, Sandra, but I know it's new to you, and maybe to some of the viewers out there. So this is great. So we have a great test case right here. But I mean, if it's as simple as you say, you go ahead, Sandra. I mean, why hasn't it been done before?
Why wasn't it done? I think because they don't understand it. When I wrote my first book on this subject about 15 years ago, and interestingly enough, it was called Funny Money. So I interviewed about 100 people, doctors, lawyers, dentists, business people, the chief executive editor of one of Canada's biggest newspapers, one of its most important, they think, and the publisher of one or two others, and some financial writers, and said, tell me where money comes from. And first of all, they were gun shy of the question. And I say, come on now, it's not going to bite you. And so then they said, well, the government prints it. And I said, well, how much does the government print? And they said their estimates were from 60% to 100%. Not one of them guessed at less than 60%. And of course, if we had that kind of system, it would be very, very different. We wouldn't have a recession today. But in fact, about 90% of all the new money created every year is created by the private banks, and this is something that the people who are running the country didn't understand. And the reason I felt that I had to write a book and to keep on trying to educate them, so that they would know that whoever creates the money makes the profit, and they have turned that function almost totally over to a group of very wealthy, powerful private individuals at the expense of the taxpayers, of the people. And this isn't right, and we've got to do something about it.
Wow. Okay, so if the privately owned banks create the money, or most of it, where do they get the money that they lend?
Oh, this is the answer you'll love. They create it out of thin air. Would you believe? They have practically no money in their, they have now, after some changes in the Bank Act of 1991, they don't have to have cash reserves against their deposits. So they probably only have a cent or a cent and a half in cash or legal tender for every dollar you think you have in the bank. But what they do, and a lot of people keep telling me, well, if you go in for a loan, that they lend you the money that I or somebody else deposited yesterday or the day before. Well, that's not true. They're lent out all the time. So if you went in for a loan, let's say you wanted to borrow $35,000 for a new car, and you see your friendly banker and tell them what you wanted. They say, well, what collateral do you have? Some stocks or bonds? Well, if not, how about a second mortgage on your house or cottage?
Okay.
Or failing that, get Hugh or someone else, a friend or relative as a co-signer, and then they're satisfied.
Okay.
And they'll say, okay, here's a note to sign.
Okay.
And they give you a note to sign for $35,000,
okay,
principal plus interest,
okay,
at prime plus 1 or 2% or 3%, depending on, I sometimes think, the color of your eyes. And then as soon as they're satisfied with the collateral and they have their note signed, they tap their computer, and presto, $35,000 shows up in your account that you can go out and spend to buy the car. Seconds earlier, that money did not exist.
It's just a number.
It's virtual money.
Okay.
Actually, it's virtual money.
Okay.
It's debt money. We count it as money. It works as money. So
it's not real money.
It's not real money, no. But the way the system works, as far as the banks are concerned, it's sort of a double accounting.
Okay.
They use your note as an asset, and the money they created is a liability. So this balances their books.
Okay, so they're taking my real money because as collateral, and they're giving me fake money.
Well, you didn't give them any real money. You just gave them a promise to pay.
Okay.
And then that's what they gave you back.
But if I can't pay it, then they can take my real collateral.
They will grab your...
And they never gave me real stuff to begin with.
No, but if you don't pay it back with interest, they'll take your car.
Now that sounds like a scam to me.
That sounds like a total scam.
Yeah.
It should be illegal.
And it should be. And this has been going on for how long?
A few hundred years.
Wow.
And it is a scam. And
wow, it's a really well hidden scam.
Yeah.
At least I know lotteries are scams, right? It's right in your face.
This is something we should talk about, is how the scam came into being.
Well, look, we can do that. It just seems that people, it strikes people when they hear this as impossible or just new information. And it seems as if maybe we're just not properly educated about how the system works.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
Because from what I found and my experience when I wrote the book, I would guess that about one person in every 100 understands how it works. And I've never seen a parliament with more than 5 or 6 people who knew how it worked.
Wow.
And since my being there, not one in the cabinet that I know of. So anyway, let's go back to the time when the Bank of England was chartered. And King William of Orange, was fighting a war on the continent. He ran out of money. So somebody said, well, why don't you have a bank? Sounded like a good idea, so Parliament approved the charter for the Bank of England, and the rich people in London put in £1,200,000 of gold and silver and lent it all to the king at 8%. Pretty high interest rate for government guaranteed loan. Then they charge a few little other things in the process, just like they do today. And then to show his appreciation, the king said, now you can print, print, £1,200,000 in banknotes and lend them to your rich friends. So in effect, they were given the right to lend the same money to 2 people, the king and the friends, at the same time, and collect interest from both.
Okay.
Well, over the years, that ratio, which we call leverage, that was a leverage of 2 to 1. And let's call it a minor, a minor misdemeanor,
okay,
sort of a small fraud kind of thing. But over the years, that's grown much more generous due to the avarice of the banks and the collusion or cooperation of politicians, including kings and queens and emperors over the years. And in the early years of the 20th century, the American federal banks had to have a gold reserve of 25%, which means they could lend the same money 4 times. When I was young, in Canada, the banks had to have a cash reserve of 8%, which means they could lend the same money 12.5 times. Well, then after our government changed the Bank Act in 1991, along the lines of Milton Friedman, and adopted the new idea of capital reserve, our banks were allowed to have assets 20 times their capital. So in effect, they could lend the same money to 20 different people, businesses, or governments and collect interest from every one of the 20 simultaneously.
Wow.
Now that is what I call grand larceny.
Wow.
That is just...
That's a huge scam.
That's a major, major fraud. And it's just a wonder that they haven't been called on it long ago. But the reason really is, which we can discuss, that they're running the world now, and they make it very difficult for people who try to change the system.
Like yourself.
Yeah.
So it's it is really that's evidence that we've gone from a 2 to 1 ratio to a 20 to 1
yes.
ratio, which means that the scam has increased tenfold from the first Bank of England.
Right.
Now, and this is money as debt. This is all the money that's created is created as debt.
Well, you just put your finger on the other problem. In addition to being a fraud, there is a real problem when most of the money is created by the banks, because it's all debt money. It's all virtual money.
So that's what debt money means, right, Paul? It's fake. It's not real.
Well, it sometimes works as money, but it's not real money.
Okay.
It's not like a $10 bill or a $20 bill or...
Can't hold it in your hand.
No.
Well,
okay.
Plus the other thing is, because it's all created as a debt, now interest is owed on it.
Oh, sure.
And where is that interest supposed to come from?
Well, absolutely. And this is... It's a system. It's just like a balloon. And the banks keep pumping in this debt money, and the balloon gets getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like a bubble, some people call it. The balloon gets bigger until finally the debt load is so high, or the interest on the debt is so high, that we can't carry it. And then it's like a balloon with a pin stuck in it. And it goes swish like that, and you have a recession. And that's when people lose their jobs and their houses and all of this sort of thing.
And now this is what's happening in the U.S. with the fiscal cliff and the whatever they call that, where they have to mandatorily stop federal government expenditures. This is that balloon has hit its maximum size.
Absolutely, the balloon burst because it got too big. And this has happened 25 times or more in the United States since 1890 rather, pardon me.
25 times?
25 recessions and depressions, and in my opinion, not one of them was necessary. And yet they have disrupted the lives of millions and millions of people.
Their real lives, not their fake money lives.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we talk about a global financial crisis, and so many countries. We hear about Greece, we hear about Portugal, the U.S., and we have our own problems here in Canada. Now, but these problems didn't always exist. I mean, we did very well during and after the Second World War here in
Absolutely, and Canada started out beautifully. We nationalized the Bank of Canada in 1938 due to the advice of Jerry de Geer, who was the icon of monetary reformers. And Mackenzie King, he convinced him that if a government that doesn't control its credit